Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week on the Cyclekart I'm connecting myself to the cart. See you in a minute. Right, it's time to look at my throttle cable. I've got a longer cable because the one I got first time wasn't long enough. A little bit of a nipple on the end, and I can pull that whole thing out of the sheath. What I think I'm going to do, I've just found a bolt which will fit through that hole in the pedal quite nicely. So I'll either drill a hole through it that I can feed that through, or get some sort of fixing, clever sort of pin arrangement to hook onto that anyway. So that will sort that end, and then it can go from there to mount on the side with a P-clip. I'll probably also need to do something to restrain the cable at the actual sheath end, so that will need to be held in a bracket of some sort. I want to keep those off to the side if I can, as much as I can, so that it won't get in the way of your foot. So that's the first job for the day. See what we can make up in a bit of aluminium or something. Now at the other end of the throttle cable I need to do two things. Firstly, I need to slacken off the bolt here, because this is designed to be able to turn it up to a specific throttle setting and it stay there for use on machines like whacker plates and things, whereas in fact I want it to be able to go fast and go slow. So that tension needs to be taken off that. Then I need to put some sort of a restraint for the cable end here, and I think there's a bracket there for that, so we need to make something to hold the end of the cable to that. We can then thread the rest of the cable. I think I'm going to put a bolt up through that hole there upwards and put a hole through it, drill a hole through it, so we can then fix it at that end. And then it will need a couple of springs, one at this end to shut it and one at the other end, just so that you're doubly sure that if anything goes wrong it automatically pulls back to tick over. So we can start, I think, with a bracket to hold that at that end, and then once we've got that restrained we can work on the rest of this. I'll probably take the carburetor top off anyway if I can, just to make that a bit more accessible. Right, I made the first bit, I think. Just basically used a scrap of aluminium that will bolt through from underneath into there. It's got a hole that is about 5.5mm diameter on the outside and about 3mm on the inner, and that will take the end of the cable, I hope. I can do it one-handed. Put this down a minute. There we go. So that goes through there, holds the ferrule on the outside, clamps down onto there, and then that will just attach into the throttle end here when I've got that bit done. That's the first stage. We'll get that one bolted in first. Okay, that's got the front part in that holds the cable outer. I've put a bolt through from underneath that's lock nutted in to the actual arm, drilled a hole through that, and then there's a nut underneath it and a nut above it clamping it, so that in theory now at the other end, if I accelerate, that moves things at that end. So I think we're we've got that side of things sorted. That will now run. I've loosened that bolt off, the nut off on that one, so that it's quite slack and will always return, even though, as I say, it wants something more than that little spring on there. We'll put another spring or two on it in other places, I think. So it's time to go down the other end and see if we can't sort the front bit out now. I've been struggling for quite some while to see how I can get a throttle spring to work on this accelerator pedal, because effectively I want to be pulling it back this way, and springing anywhere around there will just get in the way of your foot using the pedal. As it is, the cable is going to be, you know, close, but something affecting that is not going to help. But I decided that if I put a hole through that bottom part, which pivots that way, I've just drilled a hole through there out that way. It means I can get a spring pulling backwards, where there's plenty of room here on the bottom of the pedal. So that solved that problem. So all I need to do now is just connect the cable up and get it anchored, and we're on our way. Right, even if I haven't got the front end completely sorted with the cable, I know roughly where I'm going with it now. I've made a small aluminium T-piece there. It's got a hole through for the cable. That will go that way. I've got my holes drilled through the spring, so all I need to do now is mount the cable somewhere suitable. I need to make some sort of bracket for that, and hopefully then we will have the accelerator sorted at this end. I need to sort myself some springs now, which I haven't got anything suitable, so I need to sort of spring out for the throttle pedal return and at the back end as well. So I'll try and get hold of some springs and have a look at eBay, and I'll get this other bracket made for here. Looks like a sort of a metal P-clip really, just to bolt into the side there. I've got some aluminium left over from the other bits I've been making, so we're going to cut that, and that should, although it doesn't look a lot, I think I've pretty much resolved the front, all of the pedals now. I need to bleed the brakes, and if I can get that connected up as well, we are now then connected to the engine. Right, so it's been a very good productive day on the Cyclekart today. I haven't done a lot, but what I have done is cleared a lot of problems up. First of all, I've been trying to find a way of making sure I could record how long the engine was running, because I've got an electric meter that I can connect to it somewhere here, which will give me an hour's run time. And the only real way I could get that to work up to now was to connect it to the positive feed and negative to the chassis, but that wouldn't tell me when the engine was running. Like now, the ignition is on, it would be clocking up hours, but that wouldn't be any use to me because the actual motor isn't running. But what I've found by going into all the wiring diagrams and understanding it a bit better is that the brown wire, which has currently got a wire attached to it, is from the coil, and that is at the moment giving out what I think is an AC voltage, so it'll need to put a diode in line with it, which is what happens on the dashboard at the other end. But that will only work when the engine runs. So if I just turn it on now, you'll see that will go from 0 I'll put this down. And that stops when the engine stops. So that's the first thing, which was sort of bugging me. Now the next thing that I've been working on is the throttle cable. I've made a bracket there which houses the end of the cable. I've drilled and put that stud in, and that clamps down on the cable, so that's sorted that in now. Now at the other end I made another bracket from the remaining piece of metal, which again houses the end of the cable. The stuff runs through it there, and although there's no spring on it at the moment other than the one on the carburetor, that is now operating the back. So I'll just show you on that one as well. So it needs a bit of adjustment on the gearbox at the moment, because it is trying to get off like a racehorse. It's trying to actually run, but that's minor. That's a minor adjustment on the cables here, which I'd messed around with to get them to run properly. Just turn the fuel off. I've also made a bracket which I need to drill and tap a hole for in there. That will carry all the rear cables for the gearbox and the brake and the accelerator cable. That will carry them there, clear of the disc brake and clear of the hub. I was worried about them catching in things down there, so that's got to be put on. But at the moment, in theory now, if I bleed the brakes, I can drive this. Now there's obviously a few more things that I need to do as pre-flight checks, but really that is the last piece of the puzzle in terms of putting it together. We now have a Cyclekart that connects to the driver, and that was the last thing I was trying to achieve in my set of things to achieve some while ago. So I think that's as far as I'm going with this. What I shall be doing on the next sort of serious video, if you like, nothing to do with cosmetics, is to start at the front, put all this back together, set all the front wheel toe ins and that, which at the moment are miles too much towed in, set the camber, get everything tightened up, put the dashboard back together, connect up my motor meter for the ammeter, put all the cockpit back together, and get this in a state where I can actually at least see if it will run down the drive and back. So that will be the next task, I think, to actually see if we can drive it out of the garage and drive it back in again. Right, well I think that's the final bit really that I need to do to get this thing ready to run. We've connected the driver to the cart. That was the last stage that I wanted to get to before I could test it. So there's a series of things to do now, some of which are cosmetic and some of which are necessary mechanically to make sure it'll go in a straight line and that sort of thing. But we'll do that over the next week or two, and hopefully then we can take it out and see what happens when we actually drive it in anger. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be doing something different on the Cyclekart. I'll see you then. Bye!